It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Jill Allen, an orthodontic consultant and owner based out of Golden, Colorado, that specializes in startups and working with doctors and teams across the United States who have been in practice 8 years or less. Jill has been in the orthodontic field for 28 years and has worked in all areas of practice. This allows Jill and her team to meet her doctors and teams when they are there and to help them where they need it the most. Jill believes in taking a practical approach to practice management and customizes her services to the needs of her clients. Jill Allen and Associates is a full-service orthodontic practice management consulting firm with a special focus on new practice startups. You like to get them young. Her specialties are orthodontic practice startups, customized solutions for existing practices, case acceptance training for treatment coordinators, practice analysis, insurance and collection training, team building. I want to start with a little historical, Jill. You gave away that you've been doing this for 28 years. I would have never said that, but you're old enough to remember back in the Orthodontic Centers of America day when Gasper Lazara took OCA all the way to the New York Stock Exchange. It's the only one in dental DSO history that made it to the New York Stock Exchange. It fabulously crashed. They all went away, and now they're all back. And what's cute is how the young little adorable millennials think this is all new. And it's like, no, if you find a granddaddy, they've been here before. What do you think is different about round one with OSA, Orthodontic Centers of America, total collapse, and now round two? Is it history repeating itself, or did they learn some lessons and are doing some things better this time around?
You know, I have to say, I do think that they've learned some lessons and they are doing it a little bit better this time around. And I think that in a lot of the practices, and I'll have to say, I don't work with a lot of them because I really do focus on, docs who want to be startups within their own practice. But what I am seeing is that I think having more doctor ownership within the new DSO programs and, some of that. And I think just having the doctors stay a part of that a little bit longer is definitely, I think, going to help that a little bit more.
I think one thing that's not going to go away is that when a human has skin in the game, they're a completely different animal when they don't. I mean, I saw with my four boys, if I did something, I thought I was doing good. I'd surprise them, buy him a bike or something. Hell, I'd have to scold them because they're leaving it out on the street. But if they had to pay for half that bike, then they parked it in their bedroom. I mean, they weren't going to let that bike out of sight. And you go to dental conventions, and all the employees are staring at their cell phone on Facebook, posting on Instagram, and all the owners are sitting there with their sharpened pencil taking notes. And there's just no difference between owner operator and or management. Do you agree with that, or is that old school, or is that a thought that needs to go to rust?
No, I do agree with that. I think I agree with you. Having skin in the game makes a difference. And, I know that, I understand that there are a lot of doctors that are moving in that direction, but I think them still having an active role in it versus just being told what to do really does make a difference. And I think too, when you have different groups of doctors getting together to bring in some of these, these plans, I think it also helps a lot versus just having, angel money or, whatnot out there helping us.
I'm so old, I remember when it was just angel food cake. We were just lucky to get that. Now. So, Jill, what's changed in 28 years in ortho? I mean, how is the game still the same? Is it very different?
No, that's a great question. And because I work with startups and I really work on helping doctors succeed now where things are at in 2020, I think some of the big things that are changing is just how digital is really affecting our industry right now. I would say that most of my startup docs are starting right with scanners. We're designing offices with dry labs right from the beginning. We're changing the way the new process happens. Again, trying to meet the patients where they're at and trying to be as accessible as possible, kind of with our fast moving generations of patients out there. So, I think, the importance of being able to schedule online and text right away with patients and getting away from the notion that the only way you contact a patient through the phone. Those are all some of the big changes that have really come along in our industry. And I think for docs that are trying to really stay in front of it, they have to be able to work with all of that technology.
And are you in Boulder or are you in Golden?
Golden. Mm-hmm.
Is that near Boulder?
Yeah, it is. It's probably 30 minutes away, if that.
Is that CU, the football college, CU?
Yes.
That's where, so I went to Creighton University, and we got so drunk one night, we drove to Boulder to see Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones the next day, but we're all dentists.
Concert.
I'm not going to say the other people's names because it might get back to Gary Isolde, a dentist in New Jersey, and Randy Kerwin, a dentist in Kansas. But we were sitting there like, when we realized it was straight down the highway. I mean, all we had to do, this was before MapQuest. We realized you just got to get on Interstate 80 and drive a long time, and we'll get to see Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones.
That's great. And get a good venue, too. That's awesome.
Yeah, so when you're starting with a young practice, I mean, I know how they think. They want to go live in Boulder. They have memories of Mick Jagger and what was it? Hart was playing that. Remember Hart, the two sisters?
Yes, of course.
And they want to go. Let's say they want to go there. That's where they're from. But the demographics, do the demographics matter? What if Boulder has more orthodontists than do demographics matter?
Absolutely. And that's something, anytime I work with a startup, that's one of the first places I try and start is getting a good demographic report. And there are a lot of pieces that we have to think about. Now, I have some docs, maybe, like yourself, that says, I just want to be in Boulder no matter what. I want to go back to my roots, whatever it is that takes them there. One of the things that I always tell my docs is if we are going to go to an area that the demographics are just saying it's not great, but your heart is saying I got to be there, then we definitely have to be going eyes wide open and be looking for, all right, if the odds are against us, what are we going to do to set you apart so that you can be successful and you know what you're getting into, basically.
And how do you? What kind of demographics are you looking for? Is it a ratio of ortho to dentist, population? What are you looking at specifically?
I try and look for an orthodontic practice. I try and look at the number of orthodontists per residence in the area. And I really try and not just look at the demographic of like that 8 to 16 age range, because in orthodontics now, we are seeing, we'll treat patients from 8 to 68, because of, the different modalities out there now in orthodontics. So I like to see, my ideal is 20,000 residents per orthodontist. So if we can drop
20,000, when you're saying residents, 20,000 people?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
They call them residents up there in Colorado, huh?
Yep. And then my ideal, and that would be like a population.
Okay.
So
people per orthodontist.
Yep. And then my ideal age range, I really like to get us an age range where we're in like that young 30s into, late to early 50s. So I think if we can hit the population and then the age range, those are two really good sweet spots that we're looking for when we're looking.
And you're talking about a median average or what?
Yep.
So
a median age.
A median age of what?
Between that, in the mid 30s to mid 40s, right in that range there. And depending upon if you're pulling
35 to 45?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. And so so you do say that demographics matter. Would you say orthodontists treat patients from age 8 to 68? Is that what you said?
I think that that has been the traditional bread and butter approach to orthodontics, though I definitely think that that is changing now with, again, just, all the aligner treatments that are out there and the different modalities, the lingual braces, the different things that are out there. And I think just in general, population is, seeing the need for straight teeth and a good bite later on in life. And so, I really feel like there's a big market to be had by focusing, outside of that 8 to 16 year range.
And how often does a person that gets braces get braces again? I mean, I see it all the time. It's kind of, remember when I said I started a show with humans are so different with skin in the game?
Yep.
I mean, it's either you have never gone to the lake or you have your own boat. You either haven't gone bowling in 10 years or you own a bowling ball. You're all in or
Sure.
you're all out. And it seems like every single person that's looking in the mirror at her teeth, she had braces when she was in high school. She has Invisalign now. And then when she gets divorced, she's having, another smile makeover before she
Sure.
enters the market. Do you have a number on if you do get braces, how many will get them again?
I think now with our generation, I would say probably more than 50% of them will again. And I don't think that that is because orthodontists aren't doing a good job at telling patients they need to wear retainers for life. But I think that it's just where people are at right now. Everyone wants a good smile and a good haircut and, wants to, what do they say? 50s are the new 40s. And, I mean, I think that, as adults continue to age and we have all of this, all of these tools right at our fingertips. And I think disposable income, the older you get, why not?
Yes, when I was a child at Wichita, Kansas, big Catholic families. I had 7 brothers and sisters. The Hennessy's had 21 kids.
Wow.
But back in the day, only the child who
Sure.
looked like they could never ever get married and make you grandkids got ortho. Everyone else, was turned out to the pasture. And now with birth rates down to 2 kids per family, it's a
Mhm.
rite of passage. And
Yep.
my
Yep.
gosh, I cannot believe the people that are getting braces. And I can't say that it was one of them was. I can't wait to tell my Aunt Sue that the best dental orthodontic consultant says that it's only from 6 to 68 because she got ortho older than that. She was well past
Well, which
68.
is
And
Which is wonderful. Well, I mean, just absolutely wonderful. I mean, we have orthodontic practices right now that are, doing Botox and lip fillers in their practice. So, again, it's meeting the patients where their needs are. And, I think if we can do that, whether it's 68, 78, or 88, if a patient feels like that's gonna make me feel better, why not? Why wouldn't we be offering that?
she said the looks of it was bothering her. And so
Yeah.
I went and got my board certified orthodontist Harry Green, and
Yeah.
he fixed her all up.
Yeah.
But my
Yeah.
my point
Wonderful.
my point is that with as population come down, I mean you got to remember 1900, 1 in 10 women on Earth still died during childbirth. Big families, but birth control brought down child mortality rates, which
Mhm.
really brings down the size of the family because when you don't know how many of your kids are going to make it, you have more. You don't plan, you have extra. But it goes back to the Smiles Direct Club, which is the biggest controversy in all of dentistry with teledentistry. But my thoughts were that when you come out with something that lowers the cost, like say regular ortho 6,500. Say you
Sure.
come out with some entry level teledentistry, scan, retainers, whatever. My gosh, for 2,500, that's gonna explode the base. And it's obviously not going to like when orthodontists tell me, oh, they're trying to get rid of the orthodontist. I said, well, it will because you don't do anything all day. When you come home, I mean, you just come home because you're bored. Have you ever felt like you worked all day and came home and you were tired? And they're like, Howard, I'm trashed. I'm like, oh, so you're working. You're working. What are you worried about? You're
Right.
working. But won't it just really blow up the scale, the base of all these people now trying to get ortho and looking at their teeth for the low end and then realize, indeed, I need to actually go see someone that's trained as an orthodontist? I would think it would. Do you think it will grow the orthodontic specialty or subtract? Because not many markets. How many markets in the United States do only 3% of the population participate in each year? I mean, this industry has so far to go, it's incomprehensible. That's why SDF and Invisalign stocks were doing so well because, I mean, how many people do you know in your own personal life that want braces?
I think there
Yeah,
are a
yeah,
lot of people that
yeah.
want, now whether it's braces or aligners, I think what people want are straight teeth. I think they want a nice smile and a good functioning bite.
Okay, that's
And I
none of
think it's
that's true.
usually
I don't agree
nice
with any
smile.
of that. I don't agree with any of that. Well, no, they're all species. They only
Yep.
have one goal: to reproduce and
Yep.
have offspring, and they want to enter the you're either a gamete producer or a gamete receiver or incubator, and the whole deal is to look as pretty as a peacock, so you can do
Yep.
your only job, which is to replace yourself. That's so all of biology is telling you need to do this, and I'm here to tell you don't do any of it. Don't get married. Don't have a kid. Save your money. Stay in school. Just don't listen to your biology at all. But they want to look good enough to reproduce and have offspring. But do you think it'll be an overall positive or negative?
I think that what the Smile Direct Club has done is it has really highlighted that there is a need out there. There's this group of patients out there that if we can learn to market to them and treat them and still hit what they're looking for, maybe they're looking to just fix that Sunday smile. But my goal is that we continue to educate this group of patients to say, you want to be able to be treated by a doctor, not by somebody sitting behind a screen. And so, if we can in our orthodontic industry find the right um, financial platforms to get in front of them and maybe be able to treat them in the right way, I think there's a huge market for us out there in the orthodontic industry
Well, do
to
you?
meet that need.
I think Gasper Lazara, who is a controversial figure among orthodontists to say the least, I think a lot of them, there were lessons learned from OC. I mean, when I look at an orthodontist that's my age, and
Mhm.
57 or older, I think any orthodontist 58 and over is old, and any of them 57 and younger are young. Um, and then next year I might change that. But I'll say, okay, well they had a 1 billion market cap. What lesson did you learn from Gasper? And they say, I don't know. I say, well, if you're an orthodontist and you don't learn one thing from the only orthodontist at 1 billion market cap on NYSE, return to your cave and roll a rock in front of the front door. What lessons did you learn from OCA? And what do you think we'll learn from Smiles Direct Club? I have my favorite lessons from OCA.
Oh, I don't know that do you really think we're comparing apples to apples when we're talking about OCA and Smile Direct Club?
Oh no, they're
Okay.
completely different business models. I just meant that they're the most controversial. Well, let's take
Mhm.
OCA first, okay? Most
Okay.
controversial. All it was that the dentist didn't understand. It was a liquidity play. If you go to sell a house in Phoenix, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you can sell in a day. But if you're a multimillionaire NBA player and you bought an 8-bedroom, 8-car garage and go to sell it, it's an illiquid asset because not many people can buy that. So in general dentist right now, a $750,000 practice sells in Phoenix in a week. But a $3 million, $4 million practice is illiquid. And if it's in a rural area, it's illiquid. So Gasper knew this. He went to Wall Street. He got a $100 million line of credit, and he started buying out the big boys, the $2, $3, $4 million players that needed
Mhm.
liquidity, and they all jumped. He gave them the money. He sold all these practices at one time, and then their contract was they had to work for him for 3 years, and at 3 years and one day they quit, and then they replaced him with some young punk out of school, and that guy was perfect for $1 million practice. But he couldn't do
Right.
a 2 or 3 or 4 million that some guy. It's kind of like the boiled frog. You don't know when you're 60 and you're doing 3 million a year. You don't know how slow you are when you're 25. Lesson learned. One time I was looking at an X-ray and I turned to my assistant Jan, who'd been with me 30 years, and I said, "Look at that. I mean, what idiot would do something like that?" And she said, "Doc, you did that in 1987."
Oh,
And
no.
I was mortified because I had forgot that I used to be that dumb. I mean,
Yeah.
we all
Yeah.
start a journey of 1,000 miles somewhere. But what I liked about OCA though is it doesn't make sense to me if I go get my hair and nails done. Let's say I'm let's say you go get your hair done once a
Mhm.
month and it's $100.
Mhm.
And let's say you get a mani pedi done once a month and it's $100. And you walk into your mani pedi and she says, "Well, it's $100 a month, but I need a 2 year contract, so I need half down. I need 1,200, and then we'll see if Care Credit approves your financing for the back half." And Gasper was the first person who told me. He said, "What are you financing? Are you going to prepay your rent, mortgage, equipment, bill out, computer, insurance, malpractice, professional due, blah, blah, blah?" He says, "On a new patient, it's $100 set of brackets and a pan out and study models." And he goes, "So they went 100% financing. No one can be approved. $199 a month. No down payment, just like they sell cars and furniture." And of course, it exploded. And to this day, I see there's a guy out in Maricopa's got a big old billboard.
Mhm.
Orthodontics, no down payment, $199 a month. No one's financed it. Just declared bankruptcy. You've been approved for financing $199 a month, and so that was a huge lesson about,
Yes.
and it makes you wonder, why does an orthodontist need a down payment? Because in economic theory, I mean, in Chicago, University of Chicago, that I think has 18 Nobel Prize in economics, they say a down payment is an economic barrier to entry. And so, why do they want an economic barrier to entry to finance something that they don't need financing because it's a service and they're not going to prepay their rent and electric bill and labor?
So I think, well, you're asking me a loaded question here,
Well,
but I,
loaded or lots?
yeah,
Loaded?
both. I think that why I think to some extent it really depends on where a doctor is. If you're a new doctor and you just took out a $650,000 loan to open up your practice and you have 500,000 in student loan debt, and you're getting started with a practice, and let's say you're going to do some type of aligner treatment or anything beyond braces. I think that from an overhead standpoint, to not take some type of a down, just the cash flow is not there. There just is not enough in a margin to, allow a doctor to be able to support themselves and not have to be working somewhere else for multiple years. So I think that, when you're looking at it from a doc who's been in practice 8 years or less, especially in that 5 years and less window, I think we do have to have flexible financing, but I do think we have to cover costs. And I think there's a difference between covering costs, in aligner treatments or specialty of treatments versus just braces. I think that when you're talking about a doc who's been practicing 10 to 15 years, for sure, I mean, we should have that cash flow, that AR revenue, especially if we're keeping our delinquencies at a 3 to a 5% delinquency rate. So if we're doing that, can we maybe change that barrier? For sure. But I really do think it depends on where a doc is at in their career, and where they're at from, what type of money they're making compared to the debt load that they're holding.
So you say demographics matter, they're going to treat people from 8 to 68. You need about 20,000 population per orthodontist.
Hmm.
When they open up that orthodontic practice, are you going to recommend, since they have $500,000 of student loans, are you going to recommend that they lease? Humans still are territorial. They like to own their own farm. Are your new guys, are they more likely to buy the land and building or just lease?
You know, I think it depends on if they're coming right out of school or if they've been able to associate and pay down some student loan debt. So I would say in most cases, if we're coming right out of school, probably leasing, unfortunately, makes the most sense because we can afford that. I think that if a doc has been able to associate for a while, pay down that student loan debt, then get in. And, ideally, I think my ideal is always for a doc to be able to have a property and a business. So if we can have, those two revenue streams, that's, I think that's always great. Or, those two investments. But I think it just depends on where a doc is at, if they're coming right out of school or not.
And do you see, we're always told that the generations are different, that boomers are different than Generation X and baby boomers and OK Karen and all that kind of stuff. Do you believe that the millennials are different in their drive to be an owner operator? Do you think they're more content? They're obviously content with having smaller families and less children. Are they more content with being employees at a DSO than working for themselves?
I think I don't necessarily. I've had my business for the last 12 years and have been focusing on startups, for the last 12 years now. And what I would say is that I think that because the student loan debt continues to go up, I think that doctors are a little bit more hesitant to jump into their own practice. And they're definitely feel a little bit better about going and getting an associateship job for a couple years. But, I have a continual, cycle of docs that, I speak at a lot of the colleges and, are calling me 3 or 4 years after graduating saying, okay, I'm ready now. I can only take this for so long. Now I'm ready. I've paid down some debt. I'm ready to handle my own practice. So I still think that millennials and the younger generation, they want to be owners. I think unfortunately when we had the big stock market crash and, everything happened, in about 10 years ago or so, I think one of the things that happened is so many orthodontists are holding, our senior docs are holding onto their practices that it's forcing a lot of the younger docs actually have to start their own practices. So there just isn't as much on the market anymore.
When you say when the stock market crashed 10 years ago, you mean 10 minutes ago, right?
Yeah, I should be talking about 10 minutes ago,
Yeah,
right?
they all three indices dropped 7%. I mean, and to the kids, I just want to say a couple things because I'm getting a lot of texts and all this stuff and emails. But the bottom line is, I've lived through 4 contractions. It was 1980 was the worst. My gosh, that was bad. How old were you in 1980?
Let's see. So I was born in 71. So I was born in 71.
So you were 9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you missed that one. That was the worst. It was 21% interest rates, double-digit unemployment, and interest. And it was. I had 3 friends whose dad lost the family farm that had been in the family for generations. That went in the barn and blew their head off. It was bad. And Paul Volcker, the Fed chairman, he had to have armed guards. It was the worst. And then you had I graduated in 87, and then Black Monday 87, the market fell a quarter, and then the longest build up, then Y2K, and then Lehman's Day. And all I want to say about these deals is they happen, and in 18 months they're over. I mean, it's just something that you live through. It's no big deal. It seems like people spend more years worrying about the next one than the actual year or so going in. But as far as your business, here's what it means when the stock market crashes. Imagine every day that you walked out of your dental office to get in your car, some dental consultant was standing there yelling a price at you. I'll buy it for $500,000. And then the next day you walk out, I'll buy it for $400,000. And the next day, $800,000. Well, someone's going to give you a price every day. That has nothing to do with your business. Do you get new patients? Do you retain staff? Are you having a profit margin? When you buy a stock like a dental office, you should be able to hold it for 5 or 10 years without ever getting a price. When you buy a stock, it's like owning a business. So a lot of people are asking me and asking on the deal today, well, are you going to pick up SDC that it's plummeted? The question isn't the price of SDC, Invisalign, or anything. The only question is this business. Like if I went back home to Kansas and I went to any wheat farm and I said, how is this business? They would tell me every year what the ground's putting out, their cost, their weight, and you could make a decision on whether or not you would want to buy that farm for 10, 20, 30 years. But the people who trade in stocks aren't buying businesses. They're gambling, casino, crazy, nut jobs, whatever. And but what this is going to plummet. I only have one prediction on this recession. There is a recession. It's underway. I'll say it. I said the R word. Joseph Schumpeter got a Nobel Prize in economics, the Austrian economist. He wrote about cycles. And there's a business cycle because humans are making all the decisions. And unlike me, who's never been wrong in my life, usually after a whole bunch of humans make a whole lot of decisions for a whole long time, it turns out that they're wrong, and a correction, the water goes out to the sea, and you get to see who's swimming without any swim trunks on. And then those malfeasant people become unemployed, and they get redeployed into better business models. And I can tell you that in the DSO world, that a third of the DSO's offices, if a DSO owns 30 offices, and I know everybody wants to talk about the ones that own 50 to 100, or 1,000, like they all want to talk about Heartland and Pacific and Aspen. That's a whole different league. That's like NFL. The average DSO is going to be like 3 to 15 offices, and it's a huge chunk of the dental market. It's about 12%. And every DSO that I have ever had the honor of seeing the data on, 1/3 of their practices are kicking ass, 1/3 are just treading water, and 1/3 are bleeding, and they're getting fed a continual influx of private equity money, which will shut off immediately. And I am predicting that when you fund cash into an expansion, and when it turns off, you get the contraction. And the contraction is now. And so when you call your private equity guy and say, sorry, I got these 5 offices and they're still bleeding, they still got staff turnover, it's still a bad location, the marketing's not working, they liquidate them. So I believe that there's, in the next several years, that people like you who are focused on young startups will have a plethora of offices being sold and liquidated. And so it just changes the game, and it'll redeploy the asset better, because you'll get someone who doesn't have skin in the game to sit there and say that. So on that note, I'm going to ask you that. This was all a lead up to one lousy question. So when they come to you, how are you going to navigate the future with, hey, I got a old practice you can buy from some guy that was so old he had an AOL email address, or start
Still
up
have
your
them
own?
out there.
Yeah. So how do you decide that?
Well, so I navigate that right now, and really, I'm going to bring it back to what I tell docs. Even if I'm working with docs who are looking at doing an acquisition, because for me, I don't care whether it's an acquisition or a startup. I just want them to be successful in their next 20 years of practice. So believe it or not, even on an acquisition, I'll have them pull demographic reports and make a decision. Is the practice that they're going to buy going to make sense, just like we would if we were going to look at doing a startup? Is it in a successful place? Because just because an orthodontic practice is set up and ready to go and has been there for 20 years, but if it's been declining and the doctor really hasn't been working on the practice, it may be better to buy the doctor's patients, if there's any left, and and maybe start your own, or just start your own. So again, it just kind of depends on what the demographics say and what the opportunity is with an acquisition.
So when you're working with the young, and you want to get them fresh, and I love that. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to pal because my dad wouldn't take me with him golfing, and he finally said he was going to take me with him golfing, and then he drops me off at the clubhouse to take lessons, and he said no. He said you're not gonna learn. You're gonna learn right. And the teacher said to me, he goes, your dad's right. He goes, I could never correct your dad's swing. It's so ruined. And he's trying to get you to get a better swing. So when you're looking at those startup the kids, what is the slice? What is the bad swing? What are the mistakes that when they get with people like you, they're not going to make and have to eat for their whole career? Is it demographics? What is it? Systems? Is it
Yeah,
software?
I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. I had somebody ask me once, well, Jill, what do you specialize in? And I think as an orthodontic consultant that does what I do, I have to specialize in all areas of the practice. And I think, it's not just about marketing or it's not just about systems. It's, it really is everything. So, when I'm working with a doctor and when I'm trying to help them, it's, do we have a good marketing plan that makes sense? Because we've got some really good fundamental numbers that we have to hit within our first year. I like for my startup practices to produce a minimum of 300,000 in our first year, which is collecting right around 150 in our first year. So we have to hit some very basic numbers, and in order to do that, we have to keep our overhead correct with the amount of training and team members that we have, the systems that we put in place. So it's really a holistic approach to training to getting them going where we want them to go in that first year.
On OrthoTown, which I'm sorry, you have to be an orthodontist to get on the site or own the damn thing.
Yes.
I own it, so I can get on, obviously, but I'm not allowed to post.
Yes.
Go figure that. But anyway, I called you to be on the show. You didn't call me. I mean, when I do a search, I had Jill Allen and Associates train my insurance coordinator. She was doing well. Blah 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 blah. I mean, everybody loves you, but
Thank you.
my feedback on you from Dental Town and Ortho Town is I would have thought you were you only train staff. It seems like everybody talks about your team training, not starting up an orthodontic practice, marketing, all that kind of stuff. So why is your brand more staff and team training, and it's very good? I cannot find one person to say anything negative about you, but after you've been on my show, that will
wonderful.
change. That will change. They'll say, I can't believe she went on Howard's show. And it does. When I talk to my orthodontist, it seems like some of the young are scared about SDF or anything like that. But the old guys, it's the same old problems. It's staff, it's people, it's always people. It's either the worst one, which is patients are bad, staff can be annoying, and if your spouse gets out of line, the alimony will make your student loans look lame. How do you what are you doing for team building in orthodontic practices?
For team building, it really comes down to just making sure that we're working with the doctor and the team to make sure that the culture is right. So what does that mean? And I think especially in younger practices, it's a doctor's just trying to figure out how to run a practice, and they haven't even really figured out what is the culture of their business going to be, it seems scary to not have employees that fit the right culture. But, one of the things I'm always, talking about, and I've done a couple lectures on hiring and firing, is if you don't have the right team member on your team that matches your culture and matches the direction that you're going to go in your practice, you're just not going to go where you want to go. And I think that this is especially evident in practices where doctors have done acquisitions, and maybe they have team members that were holdovers from a previous doctor, and that team member may have been wonderful for the previous doctor, but when a new doc comes in and they're trying to take a practice in a new direction, sometimes there's a clash, and the doctor will never get where he wants to go or she wants to go, as long as they've kind of got the person that isn't moving in the same direction with them. So from a team building standpoint, I think it's just trying to really help the doctor and the team all be on the same page and recognize the values of the practice and where they all, what that vision is, and helping them get there.
One of the things that all dentists argue about, but you're an expert in orthodontics. And remember, if you're a general dentist, she's a specialist in orthodontics. You wouldn't ask your endodontist about silver diamine fluoride, but dentists always struggle with insurance participation.
Sure.
And I know orthodontists do. Is insurance participation different for orthodontists than general dentists, or is it the same, or how does it look in taking insurance in an orthodontic practice?
I think that we are a little bit different than in the general practice world. I mean, I think, the basics of billing is the fact that we have one code to do multiple things, where in dentistry, you have a code for everything. I mean, you almost have a code for putting gloves on, right? I mean, like you could bill out for everything. And so I personally think that the dental field is much more restrictive. And I think you have to be much more selective on, if you're going to participate or not, and what you're going to do within a dental practice. I think in orthodontics, we still have the ability to choose to be in or out of network, because luckily for us, our orthodontic benefits, even though it's a lifetime maximum, our orthodontic benefits pay whether a patient is in or I'm sorry, whether a doctor is in or out of network. And so unless we're looking at, like I tell my docs, if we're going to choose to be and participate in orthodontic, insurance plans, number one, we got to kind of think of it as marketing dollars. So every time we have to do a write-off, that we kind of look at that as that's what it cost me to get that patient. But it's only a write-off once. And I think if we can get away with not having to participate, it's better, because all of the insurance companies out there pay out of network. So I just don't think we have as big of an impact. I do think we still have to be smart about it. And in orthodontics, there's 3 different tiers. There's a premier, a preferred, and an HMO tier per se. And some of that has to do with what a doctor specifically wants out of their practice and their insurance, what they're looking to get out of that. But I do think that there is some differences. And I do think that insurance and orthodontics can also help drive patients into a practice as well.
Another thing I hear you talking about is orthodontic treatment coordinators converting pending patients. And here's I mean, I love dentists. I really do. I love them. Well, I do. And the thing about dentists is all my friends who are dentists, physicians, and lawyers, they all have 8 years of college. They've all read 1,000 books. Every time I go over to a dentist home, and they got 100 nonfiction books they've read. They know shit. They know. And what's amazing is so many of them know so much about the craziest little stuff. And then you go to other people's houses, and there's no sign of anything nonfiction, and all they talk about is Netflix and HBO, and they live in a world of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'd rather talk to my homies, and my homies are very, very read, but they're also very honest. They'll tell you, Jill, I don't like selling. I didn't go to school 8 years to sell. If you want to, you want to sell used cars, go for it, but they hate it. It's a 4-letter word, and so how do you even work? How do you even work with people who will tell you, like you'll say to orthodontists, well, how many new patients, how many opportunities, how many closes did you get? Man, they just cringe.
Yep.
How do you make an introvert scientist who should have got a degree in physics? Now he's an orthodontist, and he works in millimeters. How do you convert him to getting into sales mode, closing?
So I think that the key is, if an orthodontist can help it, they should not be the one doing the sales aspect of it. They should be coming in and presenting a treatment plan that a patient can understand and meets the needs of a patient, where they feel like they can get the buy-in from the patient. And then they should use their treatment coordinator to close that deal for them. I try and encourage every orthodontist that I work with, they should not be presenting fees. They should not be working the deals, however you want to, different offices do it differently. But I think having a well-trained treatment coordinator is the key to that. That allows the doc to come in and shine, talk about what they know, talk about what they're passionate about, and then hand it off to a treatment coordinator who does like the sales. And that's the beauty of it, is we have a lot of really amazing treatment coordinators out there in our industry that really enjoy connecting and becoming a liaison with patients and getting them to say yes to treatment.
You wrote an article for OrthoTown, Software Solutions by Jill Allen. In-house server or cloud-based system, the answer depends on your preference. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts about that?
Now more than ever, and gosh, I wrote that how many years ago? Five, maybe 4 or 5
24,
years ago.
four, yep.
Yep. Okay. So, I say now more than ever, if a doctor can go with a cloud based software system, I can't even think of in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years an office that we haven't went cloud based. But, I just think it makes the most sense if we can do that. And there's so many great operating systems out there now that are cloud based. And whether we run Macs or PCs, I just highly suggest it. We don't have the upgrade of keeping up with the server and the maintenance that comes along with that. And I think, it also makes it really nice should a practice decide that they want to have multiple locations. We don't have all the issues with a server in one location and remoting in somewhere else, and just all of the headaches that come up with that. So I am 100% on board with sticking with and trying to go with a cloud-based operating system.
They get mad at me when my guests don't drop names.
Sure.
They want to know exactly.
Sure. So I think some of the really good cloud-based systems out there right now, Cloud9. I think what's nice about Cloud9 is they are truly cloud-based. So it doesn't matter if you have a PC or a Mac, you're going to be able to get on. You could be running your Mac right next door to your PC, and you can still jump on. Another really great company out there I really like a lot is Ortho2. Edge, their cloud-based system. I do think that they work a little bit better if you're running PCs in your practice, but I have many practices that run Macs, and we just run Parallels. Again, two very robust systems. And I also really think Dolphin Cloud does a really nice job at, now they again are more PC based, but they also do a really good job. So those would be probably my top three that I would go with if we were going with cloud-based operating systems in the orthodontic field.
And I noticed a lot of companies now that all the patents on aligners are gone. My list is now 40 different aligner companies. They're just coming from everywhere. But the big boys have them: Henry Schein, GC. Is everybody going to have an aligner company someday, or do you think that orthodontists are going to skip all that and go right to software and be printing their own aligner trays in their office?
I think it's probably going to be half and half. I mean, I already have startups that are starting right from the beginning with scanners and digital printers right from day one opening. So I really think it's just what the doctor themselves, what they're interested in, and if they can scale it. And that's really what it comes down to. I think if anything, my startup docs can definitely handle. It's just the cost. It goes back to that overhead, but they can definitely handle scaling. The production of doing a case here and there. I think again, it'll just depend on ease and how much time a doctor has. Because right now I see so many of my docs that are doing let's just say all these aligner treatments, and they're I think what they are finding is they're spending more and more time working on the aligner treatments, and now we're almost having to put new job positions into the practice, digital specialists into our practice to help our doctors just maintain. So it's just kind of switching one thing to another, but I think they're all going to have them.
So just to be clear, your top three, you said orthodontic practice management software. You said your top three was Cloud9 software, Ortho2 Edge, which is by Edge,
Yep.
And what was the third
Ortho2.
one?
Dolphin Cloud.
Dolphin Imaging and Management by Dolphin.
Yep. And now they have a server-based system and they have a cloud-based. So if we're talking cloud-based, I would go with cloud through Dolphin.
And explain to them why you like the cloud, though.
I think it just comes down to, and not having to deal with, when you think of a server, and I'm sure everybody who's listening, if you've had a server in your office, about every 5 to 6 years, you're having to replace that server. And a server is a very expensive piece of hardware, tends to go down a lot. I just think that if we can, and I think there's barriers to having multiple offices with servers. So if we can not have the investment in a $5 or $6 or $7 or $8,000 piece of computer equipment, not have to build a room around a server closet, and be able to have a software that we can use from home or one of our 4 remote offices, I think it just makes sense to look for those kind of IT hacks, and I think that would be through cloud-based systems.
And why? What do you like about Ortho 2?
I think Ortho 2 has done a really good job at listening to what their orthodontists out there are looking for and being aware of what is new in technology and bringing that onto their platform and just incorporating it into their software. So I just, I think that they do a really good job with that. I also think that they've just got a really good support team, a good sales team. I've never had any of my docs that have, just really had any issues at all, which, I think that speaks a lot for the company.
And then say something about Dolphin. Dolphin, actually, my gosh, I remember that. That's been around forever. When I got out of school, I mean, in '87, that was the big new thing for orthodontists, because they were the first one to take a regular Ceph, but was trying to get the tracing done immediately, which in the '80s was like, no one can do that. But they've been there forever. What do you think of Dolphin today?
I love Dolphin. I think, again, just a solid company. They've just done such a good job. I mean, I think overall Dolphin is just a good, probably the most robust from a reporting standpoint, because we started with Dolphin Imaging and then they developed management. And, and I just think that they've just been solid all the way across. Now, they started in the server realm and then went into the cloud-based. And then, last year they were kicking off Dolphin Blue, which is still in a beta version for them. But, just overall, if you want to be able to have custom reporting, I think Dolphin's definitely the way to go. The one thing I see with Dolphin is it isn't you pay one price and you get everything. They do have like paid for modules, which can get a little expensive sometimes for my younger docs. But I think for my ones who, money isn't an object, I think that they're a great, solid company.
Now, do any of them integrate well with accounting software, Quicken, QuickBooks Pro? Orthodontists, when you talk about their numbers, they might know how many new patients they got. They definitely know how many starts they have. But then when you just say, well, what's your labor? It's like you just saw your first giraffe. And then if they give you a number for labor, if you say, well, does that include FICA matching and health insurance? And or do any of these do any financial accounting?
They absolutely do not.
I don't know of an. Just like the post office.
Yeah, I don't know of an orthodontic software that does. Now they may have where you can download into an Excel file and then upload, but that's one of the biggest things that I teach with my younger docs is you've got an operating system, you've got a QuickBooks system, and you may have a CPA, and they all three don't talk. So you got to make sure, that we're managing all three of those areas. So you have a really good understanding of, what's happening in each of the areas so that that you don't have issues going on.
It's the curse of healthcare. I mean, we only see lines in government and healthcare, and there's nothing more hilarious to me than listening to, most of the dentists my age are redneck Republican. I'm from Kansas, Nebraska. I'm out here in Arizona. They're old school conservatives. They're always bad-mouthing the government. I'm like, dude, you're their twin sister. It's government and healthcare. No one else has lines. No one else has I mean, they're the same people, and they don't even know it. And that is, they don't know their numbers. They just
Mhm.
don't know. They don't know any of their cost structures. How do you try to if for the older dentists listening to me right now, and we're going to put this on Ortho Town, and for the older orthodontists, meaning old, like those 58-year-old guys, just old. If they were 58 and they wanted to sell their practice at 65, for easy math, let's just say that. How would you coach them? Which is really bad because they're going to use out all information to hold against your client. So
Yep.
so so school my old boy homie on how he can get your young client to give him the most money. What should he do to his orthodontic practice his last 8 years?
That's such a great question, because that is right in the other area that I really work, is that 8 years to retirement. I have a lot of docs that hire me to come in and help do exactly what you're asking. And one of the biggest things that I would tell my docs, my seasoned docs that have been doing this for a while, that want to get out on top, is you cannot run your practice into the ground. You have got to look at it with fresh eyes. So that means that you've got to invest in maybe a new website, and you've got to invest in getting new patients in. And, I like to have my docs look at least your, last 3 to 4 years to show growth in the practice versus decline in the practice. So we want to see that in production, not just collections, because in an orthodontic industry, any orthodontists that are listening, we know that what we produce in 1 year, we're collecting over 2. So, just because your previous couple years collections look good, if production has been declining, that young doctor, if they've got somebody like myself or, some of the other people out there that help, advise on that, are going to be telling them, they already took the money out. So I think that my seasoned docs need to invest in their practice. They need to, really take a look at, the employees that they have on their team, and, make sure that we are helping them have the tools. Maybe we need to be moving from paper to paperless. Maybe we need to really just be looking at what does it take to take you from where you are now to be 2020 standards. And going forward, if you really want to attract the eye of that younger doctor.
One of the problems I see with these older doctors, and why I would tell young orthodontists to run from that practice, is that they've had Betty with them for 20, 30 years, and every time the Earth goes around the sun, based on astrology, he gives her another dollar raise, because it makes sense if you look at the solar system, that if the Earth makes a complete rotation all the way around the sun, that it's time for another dollar. And he just keeps giving them another dollar every year, but nothing changed. They didn't get more starts. They didn't get the cost to go down. In fact, it's the opposite. Inflation is driving everything up. And then then some of these old guys' practices, it's like, my God, I'd rather do a de novo from scratch than go in here and tell 3 ladies making $30 an hour that. I mean, how do you advise about that?
This is probably one of the hardest decisions and hardest discussions I have to have with my younger docs, is that, I think if you're going to be buying a practice, you need to be evaluating the team members that are there, and you need to bring a lot of times, and this is hard, I'm telling you, this is hard, but you need to bring those employees down into industry standard numbers. You are not a senior doc who's been practicing for 30 years and doesn't have any debt. You're usually a young doc coming in, like I said, with 500,000 plus in some type of a loan, maybe student loan debt. And if your front desk, if industry standard pays a front desk $18 to $20 an hour, and your front desk person is making $33 to $35 an hour, you need to make decisions that are hard decisions, but it will be the best for your practice, because there's nothing worse than, I think, young docs being held hostage in their own practices to senior employees that don't want to work hard and don't want to help get them to where they need to go. So those are some really, really hard tough decisions. But I work a lot with my docs who are going through acquisitions and helping them navigate those really rough waters in the beginning.
And some of the DSOs, which used to, they started out with, like we talked about in the beginning of the program, like Lazarus being a liquidity play, and now there's a lot of DSOs. Heartland's one of them. He says, we're done. We're done buying your old high overhead office and trying to coach it back down to profitability. We would rather just start a de novo from scratch. Is that kind of where you're at? Or because before you even explained it, you said 3 times, it's hard. It's just hard.
Yeah, it is. And, this is a really hard fact, but, I tell a lot of my docs if it's harder to do an acquisition than it is to do a startup from a stress level standpoint. And in most cases, the doc that does an acquisition will not have all of those team members there by the end of that first year anyways. So I think, I coach my doctors and, a lot of, the docs that I'm working with to say it's better to just rip the bad bandage in the beginning and get it over with and, have people accept where they're going to be and, get a team that's behind you, build your dream team from the beginning, versus, just kind of dealing with a lot that goes on and maybe having to get rid of somebody later on and get a lawyer involved and all kinds of things because you couldn't do it in the beginning.
Did you hear about that legal case today of the doctor? He won $278,000 settlement. He fired his assistant, and she made a bunch of online reviews against him. Saskatoon dentist Gary Hoseman wins $240,000 settlement against 2 former employees who trashed him online on Google reviews after they were both separated from his practice.
Wow.
The thing I think these young kids don't realize, well, first of all, when I was little, I could go to the store and with just like $2, I could get milk, bread, eggs, cheese. I could get everything we wanted. Because they didn't have all those security cameras around there, and now, now these all your crimes are digital. I mean, you go to a crime, somebody filmed you, your phone gave it away. I can't believe that people are making online reviews on Google against a dentist, and then are going to be shocked when an attorney and Google and somebody doesn't figure out what it was. But back to the numbers. When you say labor's too high and all that kind of stuff, what should the numbers be? What would you say that rent, mortgage, equipment, overhead?
Yeah, so ideally, we want to see that, no higher than 33%, in an overhead standpoint.
For all overhead or just labor?
Just labor.
Wow. So orthodontists have 30 what percent?
No higher than 33.
Yeah, and what would you say, no higher, that's the upper. What would be the median where half the orthodontists are higher, half are lower?
Ideally, I'd like to see it in that, 28 to 30.
But you see it between what, 28 and 30?
Mm-hmm.
And what about other labor?
In regard to
rent, mortgage, equipment, build out, computers, supplies. What should supplies be?
Gosh, I would like to see that in, that 8 to 10%.
What would be 8 to 10%? Supplies?
Mm-hmm. Supplies.
Okay. Supplies 8 to 10%?
Mm-hmm. And I think what gets to be a little bit tough is when we are bringing aligner treatments into an orthodontic practice, we can see that number come up a bit, especially if they're using like an Invisalign or some of the bigger companies that, that definitely have that higher charge there. And the one thing that you have to keep in mind is I think that, when we're looking at overall overhead, when we're looking at a startup practice, our overhead is going to be, probably, 80, 85 at the highest percent in overhead as a total for an orthodontic practice. Once a practice establishes and gets out of those first 8 years, we should be down closer to 55 to 60% in an overhead. So, it definitely is a little bit different when we're talking startups to existing practices as we're coming
But
along.
where I
There.
have seen the biggest outlier differences is in what some orthodontists spend in advertising. What have you seen the range be, and what do you recommend?
Sure. I recommend that my orthodontists spend between 3 and 5% of their previous year's collections.
And do you see some type of advertising working different? Because I think you would. I mean, if you told me you wanted to be an orthodontic advertiser, I'd think, well, why would you pick that? That'd be like going into dentistry and wanting to be a pediatric dentist. I mean, what went wrong in your childhood where you're just like, I want to hear screaming kids Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I want them all to cry. It's like, okay, but you want to do braces on little Bambi from 13 to 16, but its parents going to pay for it. Have you seen anything? Is it like more likely to be mom to pay for it, dad to pay for it? I mean, as far as picking the orthodontist, who are you aiming at marketing? I mean, you got the patient, the customer, but the person paying for it is the adult.
For sure. I think the marketing has to go towards the parent. And again, that's where, when I say we're looking at that median age, remember bringing it back to the demographic piece. So if we've got our parents that are in that 30 to 45 range, which is usually about the age bringing in that 8 to 16-year-old, right? That's who we're marketing to. And I think nowadays in orthodontics, our number one first place we have to be marketing to is out there socially. So, gone are the days of sending postcards. And I'm not saying that there won't be an orthodontist out there that'll say, but Jill, because I have them, but Jill, postcards worked for me. But, I tell my docs, it's about building your brand. It's about brand awareness in that first year. And the way we do that is direct to consumer through a good website, through good web presence, through good social media sites. That's where we need to be living right now. Not that we don't still want dental referrals, but I tell all my orthodontists, it takes a good 2 to 3 years to just get a few good dentists referring to you. So it's definitely switched in the way we have done things over the last 28 years and the market that we're going to. We still need a good social presence, in the community presence. We still need a dental presence, but we really need to be spending dollars and money and effort on that internet, and social sites.
And what do you? I can't believe we went over an hour. I could talk to you for. I mean, really, I can't believe it. That was the fastest hour of my life. Do you what are you most passionate about now, though? I mean, after doing this 28 years, obviously you don't have to do what you're not passionate about anymore. As you get older and older, you just got to do what you want. What are you liking now? I mean, you're at the top of your game. You've been doing this for a long time. What are you most passionate about? What do you like? And why are you so happy? Oh, you're in Colorado. They legalized marijuana.
Right. Yeah.
Now it's all coming together.
No, I'm just teasing.
You what?
I said I didn't have any brownies today. No, I'm just teasing. No, you know what? I just love the area that I'm in. I got into consulting when I made a decision to get in. I could have went mainstream, and I had a passion for those startups and those younger docs. And I truly want our industry to be strong. And I feel like if I can help those younger docs, have good, strong practices, it's not that I don't think that the DSOs aren't going to be there, but I think that, if I can help these younger doctors have good, solid practices, and, patients will always want a choice. And if we can give them a good choice from a private practice, and, some of them may choose, to go to some type of a DSO practice, and that's okay too. But I really want to be able to be there and be a good voice and be an expert in my industry for those younger docs, or helping, my senior docs that are saying, hey, Jill, I want to be able to get out and get out on top and be able to hand over a practice that I feel really good about to somebody new that's going to come in and, kind of keep the legacy of my practice going. That's what gets me up in the morning and keeps me going.
I know that the news headlines for orthodontics is always Invisalign. When I got out of school, the big brands of Colgate, Crest, and Listerine, they were all there. The only new world brand, because I've been lecturing since 90. This August 4th, 1990 will be my 30 years. And I don't care if you lecture in Kathmandu, Malaysia, Indonesia, Tanzania. As soon as the bartender finds out you're a dentist, the first question is Invisalign. And the whole world knows it. And that's all they want to talk about. But what I see, the biggest trend is that mom doesn't like to go to a pediatric dentist and say, "What does my baby need braces?" "Oh, well, you got to go get in another line and drive to another store and wait again. And she's got a job and she's got to get off work and take her kid out of school." And when you look at the business model of retail since 1800, every generation killed the one before it by increasing size from little shop houses. They just went from 50 feet to 100 to 200, and they maxed at about 200,000 square feet before, IKEA and Walmart and all these people said, no, they're too big. Now that's where they need to get back. But do you see this trend like I do, that pediatric dentists and orthodontists, kind of like peanut butter and chocolate, when you add those together, they seem to be growing faster than solos? Do you agree or not agree?
I do think that is a trend that's coming. That's actually something that my business model is bringing on. We are bringing on working with pediatric startups for that very reason, whether it's independently or marrying them together with orthodontic practices. And I do think you make a good point. I think making it easy and accessible for patients to go from one to the other is definitely, there's a convenience factor there that I think appeals to, it definitely appeals to patients.
And that was the start of Dolphin. Dolphin, their whole start was back in the day that you'd go to orthodontist. Do I need ortho? Oh, I can't tell you anything. I got to take a Ceph and a Pano, and then you got to leave for 2 weeks and then come back, and then I'll tell you. And they're like, well, I came here to find out. And now you're saying go wait 2 weeks. And when my orthodontist got that and he could take it and do the tracing instantly, he was so excited. And sure. One-stop shop is never going to go away. Do you think there'll be a DSO that's orthodontic focused? There are, who's the biggest DSO ortho player right now? There's a couple.
I don't know. I don't know which one is bigger.
or which one have you heard of, or do you know anything about?
Gosh. Yeah, you're putting me on the spot right now. I can't even.
So my point being, it's a big thing in general dentistry, but I know they've launched one in endo, which is good luck with that one. And in orthodontics, I don't know. I don't think that's really going to be a big deal right now. I think. What do you think?
I think that they're, that DSOs are in the ortho industry, and they are, they are coming. I don't know exactly what that is going to look like. I think the model of trying to put multiple specialties together makes sense, and so why somebody wouldn't be doing that, and there are, I can think of, some doctors that are, kind of doing that on their own, and trying to build that way. But, I think you will see that. We will see that in our industry. Do I think it's going to take over everything? No, but I definitely think that it's, that it will be there, and that we're not the only ones thinking about that.
Well, the biggest one is by far D4C Dental Brands. And that's going to be Jim Sheely's, their clinical dental officer, where they're trying to roll out the D4C Dental Brands, is raising the standard in children's oral health. We are the fastest growing and largest pediatric dental and orthodontic specialty network in the United States. But that was my point. My point was that The only DSO really going after ortho is adding pediatric dentists too. I mean, so it looks like the ones that were able to get VC money and make a run out of it was combining the two, which would make me think if I was an individual orthodontist and I was just getting out of school, that maybe I should find a pediatric dentist and team up with them.
I think so. I think that it makes sense. If you can find that, and I've got some, pedo orthos going right now. Like with anything, I think you always have to find the right partner, because partnerships can be tricky. And so,
well, they're just like marriage.
Exactly.
Except, yeah.
And then you throw money in the middle of it. And, I think the biggest thing when you're looking at how do you, I was actually just talking to Chris Benson about this, how do you put a good, deal together so it's fair for both sides, right? Because, there's a piece where pedo may say, well, I'm doing all of this, but then ortho, as they're coming along, they start to make more. So, it's figuring out how do you marriage that? So again, it's a partnership, but then you throw money in the middle, and that's where most people have issues. So, trying to make that work, and then trying to decide, how do you set up those offices? And if there is a split, how do you split that? So there's a lot that definitely goes into that.
Well, it will be interesting to watch how Alstar Madel, CEO at D4C Dental Brands, combining pediatric orthodontists, because there's 331 million Americans. There's 8 billion humans. There's plenty of business for everyone. But I always found it enjoyable when I was practicing to see how all these other DSOs, what they were doing, what they were learning. It's fun. It's taking your mind out for a ride. But I want to thank you so much for coming on here. Are you still doing your webinar on practiceresults.com?
As far as, practiceresults.com is my website. And you can, anybody can find out anything about me through the website for sure. And then I do webinars, with different companies, just depending upon, what my topic is. And I speak also at a lot of different conventions. So people can find me all over.
Well, they love you on OrthoTown, which is for only for orthodontists, and then Dental Town is for anybody in dentistry, specialists, consultants, whatever. But they love you, and they're going to be thrilled. I've had several orthodontists ask me, when are you gonna podcast Jill? And
that's so wonderful. Well, Howard, thank you so much for allowing me to be on this. I mean, I think that anytime we can get good information out to dentists and orthodontists out there, I just think it's good for us. It's good for all of us, right? So thank you again for taking the time to interview me and let me be a part of this.
And 10 years from now, when someone says to you, where were you when the market crashed? I was with Howard and Jill.
That's right. That's
All right. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.